This is the full build guide for my budget Magic Find Spark Archmage for the 0.3 League. Now this build with under 20 divines of budget has insane single target, insane clear speed, and just a very smooth fun playstyle with having 200% rarity on its gear and still maintaining this level of performance at this low of a budget. As you can see in the background, divines and other currency orbs and tinks just drop off screen, and then you have to go and find out what you dropped. It could be anything, who knows. It's just a very fun playstyle, and if something does ever show up on your screen, then Zeus himself strikes that thing down from the heavens and one-shots them, as you saw from the bossing in the first few seconds of this video. If any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to play this build for yourself, it is incredibly easy to set up, and in this video I will be talking about all of the mechanics, the skill gems, the passive tree, the Ascendancy, as well as all the gear and how you can craft every single piece of gear yourself, so you will never be stuck behind some extremely expensive unique item or any sort of item that just doesn't exist on trade and feeling bricked that you can no longer play the build that you wanted to play. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hello YouTube. So, before I actually go over this build specifically, I want to quickly talk about the other build for Spark that uses Bloodmage and a Widow Hail and a Quiver. So, why do I feel like this build is superior, and why is that other build not as good as this one? Well, first of all, that build uses the cold infused version of Spark to deal most of its damage. So if you want to use that, the first problem that I have with it is you actually have to go and pick up cold infusions, and then you actually have damage, and without cold infusions your normal Spark actually does very little damage because your entire passive tree is built around buffing up your cold damage. So that is one problem. And yes, I know that that build has very nice, very smooth ways to generate cold infusions by freezing enemies, by using the Siphoning Remnants to get even more cold infusions, by using Snap to get even more cold infusions, all of that good stuff. But all of that requires you to, again, go and pick up the infusions. I don't want to do that. I want it to be as mindless as possible, just using Spark and killing everything off screen and not having to worry about any cold infusions or anything. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that that is not as budget friendly of a build as this one is. So as I mentioned, this is everything, every single thing on this entire character, including the jewels and everything, is under 20 div, right? Everything is self-crafted, and I've shown how to craft every single thing in this build in previous videos and in this one as well. So you know that everything costs way under 20 div. Okay? A Bloodmage, the bow and the quiver alone are going to cost you anywhere between 5 to 10 div combined. On top of that, you need to get rings and gear and all that stuff. And even then, you won't have as good of a single target experience because you don't have a good way to generate cold infusions for tier 3 bosses. So that's also a problem. So I just like Spark Stormweaver for that more. The second reason is that the Bloodmage version is not as budget friendly. It is still cheap, but it still has a lot of expensive pieces. It has a unique Widow Hail, and if the build gets super expensive, then that Widow Hail will get more and more expensive and more unobtainable by people. This has no uniques in the gear that you need, so it's super easy to gear and super cheap. However, Bloodmage does scale super hard in the end game. You can invest hundreds of divines and get a super big life stacking Bloodmage that does millions of DPS. So if that is your goal, you want to spend hundreds of divines on a build, then you should go for the Bloodmage version, start off with Widow Hail and eventually upgrade to the Wrathpit and life stacking version. However, if you want to make a nice, smooth, budget-friendly magic find character that you can use to farm hundreds of divines for your next build, I would recommend playing with the Stormweaver Spark version instead, which is this version. So that's my take on the other versions, but now to go over the mechanics of this version specifically. So the main thing that we are using to do damage is going to be Spark, Elemental Storm, which is the skill that we get from our Ascendancy, and Archmage. Okay, so first let's go over Archmage because that's going to be pretty important and pretty short. This is a reservation skill that gives us more lightning damage based on how much mana we have. So it says 4%. So this says gain 4% of damage as extra lightning for every 100 mana that you have. So we have 2,300 mana. That is giving me roughly 90% damage gain as extra lightning, and also raising my mana cost by quite a lot, but that's okay because we have a bunch of mana regen to compensate for that. So that's where we get most of our damage. If I was to turn that off, my Spark DPS would go from 33,000 down to 19,000. That is literally almost half my damage coming from this one reservation gem. So besides that, we have Spark. Now Spark is beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's amazing. It is a skill that fires off 12 projectiles in front of you at max level. And all of these just go flying off screen with a bunch of prod speed and prod duration scaling to make sure that everything just dies off screen and we never see a thing, and we just get to go and loot all the juicy stuff afterwards. Okay, so what are we linking it with? We're linking it with projectile acceleration 2 for even more prod speed and chance to pierce, because we don't want our Spark to stop on the first enemy. You want it to actually go through the first enemy, hit more enemies, and just clear everything even better. So 40% here, and we get another 60% on the tree. So we'll see that afterwards. And then we have Blindside. This combined with our Elemental Storm, which we use to blind enemies. So Spark procs a crit randomly. That procs Elemental Storm because this procs on crit. And then that applies blind. And then that makes your Spark crit even more and do even more damage with those crits. Now, at this point in the build, at this budget, Spark naturally has a 22% chance to crit. This goes up to almost a little over 40% chance to crit if you're hitting a blinded enemy. So I know that the 22 to 40% chance to crit doesn't seem like a lot, but trust me, it is more than enough. With how high our cast speed is, we have almost 4 casts per second, and this does go up to 4 casts per second in maps, which is very, very potent. So having not that much crit chance, but a bunch of crit damage actually is more than good enough, because we're hitting so many times, firing off so many sparks, and all of them are super infused with all the good stuff. They just do a bunch of damage, so it is completely fine. Trust me. I've played this build and I know, and you've seen it from the bossing showcase and the DPS, it is more than good enough at this budget. You can get even more crit chance if you get a crit chance on your wand, and if you get a higher tier crit chance on your focus, you can do all of that, but I didn't really care for that. I could have gotten a crit chance on my amulet as well instead of rarity. I didn't want to do that. I could have gotten crit damage on my gloves, didn't want to do that, wanted rarity here as well. So again, if you want, you can scale your crit chance up more, but I didn't want to do that, so that's that. Besides the blind side, our other supports on Spark are pretty simple. It's just efficiency to manage the mana cost from Archmage, it's mobility to fire off sparks faster while moving, and it's Rising Tempest. So Rising Tempest gives us 12% more elemental damage for each skill you used recently. So Elemental Storm counts as a skill, and this deals every single element, so lightning, cold, and fire. And you will see in maps, if you use this ability, that your Spark, if I use 3 different elements here, I go up to 45,000 damage with Rising Tempest. So you'll see the moment your Elemental Storm procs, your Spark goes up to 45,000 damage. So that's completely fine. And then the rest of our Elemental Storm is just more support. We have Shock. So this can shock and then apply lightning exposure from that shock. It has CDR and it has more duration so that when it does proc, it lasts a long time, and its base cooldown is 2 seconds, and we are lowering that down to 2.3 so that we can have a total of 4 of these going off at the same time. So that's super potent and super nice. So that's Elemental Storm, Spark, and Archmage. Every single other ability on this entire build is just extra damage. So Flame Wall is an ability that adds fire damage to our spark, and if we lightning infuse our Flame Wall, then we get a bunch of lightning damage here as well. If I can see it on the item here, we get 5 to 111, 101 lightning damage, which is super nice. This actually gives our spark a ton of damage and also makes it look super cool, as you can see here. I love how Flame Wall Lightning Infusion looks on spark, makes it look super lethal and bouncy. So that's what Flame Wall is. Orb of Storms is also just an extra damage ability. This is actually does a lot of damage in maps. So if you see a super tanky rare, just plop this down, fire off a few sparks, and it will just immediately die. I don't use this again in maps because again, all I do is spark, and I only use Orb of Storms to give me some lightning infusions so that I can use my Flame Ball with lightning infusion for those tanky abyss monsters or ritual or something like that. But that's the only thing I do there. And then we have Mana Tempest. Now this is also a super high damage ability, because if I turn this on right now, boom, I get almost the same amount of damage that I get from Archmage. So the downside of this though is this depletes my mana very quickly if I stand in here too long, right? But this is super good because this actually makes my spark split to 4 additional targets. And you can already see where this is going, right? This thing, which is already firing off a bunch of projectiles, if I stand in here for like 2-3 seconds while I'm moving, I never have to stop moving. Every single spark that I fired while standing in that Mana Tempest will go and split to 4 additional targets, and our spark also chains once, so it just rapidly clears everything, and you never have to worry about clear speed. So that's that. And then we have our Spellslinger linked with our Archmage stuff. Now, what is that about? Well, Spellslinger, this is our lightning bolt from Zeus himself. So Spellslinger is a invocation ability that we get from our wand, and this says that this generates energy every time we cast spells, and we're casting spells all the damn time, right? You can see here my energy, it's going up, keeps going up, very easy to get, and you just only need to get up to around 50-60 energy to be able to use Lightning Conduit. Now, if any of you are familiar with Lightning Conduit, you know that this is an absolutely omega nuke ability. It does a massive amount of single target damage, and now it actually does slightly better than single target because it actually fires off 2 additional bolts if you target a shocked enemy, which you're going to be doing every single time anyway. So the way this works is that if something ever reaches you, if there's proximal intangibility, you know, that very annoying modifier, if there's Undying Will on those abyss monsters that has to force you to go into range of them, you go in range, okay, and then you use Arc, boom, to shock them, and then you use Lightning Conduit, and it will one-shot basically anything in the game. This thing, this one bolt, does anywhere between 3 to 6 million damage if it doesn't crit. If it crits, then it will absolutely nuke them out of orbit. But that's how you get a bunch of damage there. And this is linked with just more damage, and just an extra level for even more damage. So that's how that works. And I mentioned Arc being used to shock. Why are we using Arc to shock? Why can't we just use Spark to shock? Well, Arc innately has 50% more magnitude of shock inflicted. So in this game, there is no cap on how big your shock can be, like in PoE1. You can make this as big as you want. So currently, with my version of the build, I am shocking for 62% for a single shock, and through my Ascendancy, I apply 2 shocks, so that is 124 shock on a target, and when Lightning Conduit then hits that enemy, it does 25% more damage per 5% shock. So if it's 5% for 25% more damage, that is roughly 300% more damage per 5 shock, and there's 2 shocks, so that is 600% more damage from this ability, which already has a massive base damage of 700 to 2286 compared to Spark, which is this much on the high end. You can see how this would absolutely destroy them. And Lightning Conduit does not consume the shock, so for single target bosses, you will actually use Arc first and then use your Spark, get them down to like 50% HP-ish, and then you just tap your Spell Slinger button and boom, they're gone. Deleted into the void, go next. Okay, so that is what your Arc thing is. Everything else is just extra. You have Frostbomb for some type of exposure on single target because this applies better exposure than your Elemental Storm does, and you get a few cold infusions for a little bit of extra damage on the boss initially. And then you have Firestorm. This is literally just non-existent. This is not supposed to do anything. I just had an extra socket here, and I thought, what should I add in this socket? So I just put in Firestorm because why not? It's an ability. It lasts a long time, like 9 seconds, and I can just use this if I feel like using it. I never feel like using it. I just don't know what else to put here. You can put nothing here if you want. It really doesn't matter, but it's just there just for the memes, I guess. So that's basically irrelevant. But everything else is pretty straightforward. The curse, obviously, we have the curse. Elemental weakness, big curse, applies cursed ground. So anything on this ground will remain cursed. Super simple, nothing to really explain there. Cursed ground, area effect, heightened cursed, stuff like that. So the support gems for Arc are going to be Shock for more chance to shock, Overcharge, and Commiserate. I wanted to talk about these because these are a bit confusing. So the Shock is for more chance to shock. The Overcharge is for bigger shocks, but then that shock gets reflected back to us, and you don't really want to be double shocked for 130% almost shock. It'll just instantly kill you. So Commiserate removes any shocks from you that this skill applies. However, the other line that says 40% more magnitude if you're already inflicted with that ailment when inflicting it, that doesn't work. It just judges things at different stages, so it just removes the shock from you after you've already applied the shock. That's just how it works. Don't ask me, I'm not the dev. It's just how it does it. And then the fourth link would be Unleash. That is for Arc to cast twice to get your double shock. And then you have Lightning Mastery, just to make Arc do some more damage, because the more damage it does, the more chance it has to actually shock something on the very first hit. I forgot to mention Sigil of Power, so this is what you're getting from your offhand staff, and this just gives you a bunch of more spell damage per stage, and you get stages when you spend 50% of your maximum mana. So if I was to use this right now, I'm 1, 2 stages, 3 stages, 4 stages. So you can see you get them pretty quick. And if I was to use other abilities while on this, so if I do this, and I use Elemental Curses, Mana Tempest, Flame Wall, and then I start casting, it'll go up to 4 stages very, very quick. And in that time, whatever boss you're fighting will be low enough that you will use your Spell Slinger, Lightning Conduit, and to just delete them. Okay, that's what Sigil of Power is for. So I also want to mention something here. Why are my attribute tags here red? That is because I am going over the limit for Dex and Strength gems, but in reality, I am not. And that is because the extra green gems are in my offhand. So my Sigil of Power has these 2 green gems here, and my Arc has 3 green gems in it. Right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that puts me down to 11 Dex gems for my main hand. That is why you can see my abilities in my main hand aren't grayed out, because I am still using them. And when I swap over to the offhand, then my main hand has a lot of green gems. So then those get subtracted from my offhand. So nothing breaks, all of it still works. Same thing for the strength. I have this 1 extra gem here for strength, and that is the only one. So if I swap back and forth, it's completely fine. So don't worry about that. But it does make it so if I was to remove a dexterity gem right now, like this, I can't put it back in. I would have to go to Doriani, get more dex by replacing some nodes, then put this back in, and then do it. So if I go over here, and I replace some random int nodes with dex. To do this, you would have to go over the limit, so I'm now over it. Now I can put this back in, and then I can respec these back off of dex, back into int, and it will then work again. So like that. So just keep that in mind, please. Now, the main thing to talk about is what is the playstyle overall. I talked about a lot of different skill gems there, a lot of different stuff, and I mix and match the abilities that you're supposed to use and when you're supposed to use them. Well, the way to play, let's say the map starts right here. You go to the map, and this is what you do. This is it. This is all. Like literally nothing else. Right, you just do this every single time you see a rare monster anywhere off screen, like you see the skull, you just start casting your spark and it'll die before it even reaches you, and then you walk over. Next rare monster, start casting your spark off screen again, so on and so forth. If there are very tanky modifiers on the map, like elemental resistances or more monster life, or if you're running delirious maps, then it would be wise to combine your Mana Tempest with a Flame Wall as well, to just get a little bit more damage off screen for some extra assistance, and that's it. If you are doing a Abyss where monsters are spawning right there, let's say that closet over there is the Abyss, you want to put your curse down on the Abyss, you want to stand on your Sigil of Power, and then you want to do all the stuff that I mentioned earlier, right? So it's not a lot of buttons. And for the most part, it's just 2 buttons, Spark and Mana Tempest, left click and right click, and that's all. Okay? That is the main crux of the playstyle. For, again, tanky stuff, Flame Wall, and super tanky stuff, Curse plus Sigil of Power. That's it. And if something is just super bothering you, and you just can't kill it, for it has Soul Eater, it has Regen, it has Proximal Tangibility, all of the annoying mods on it, then you press Control to go over to your other skill bar, you zap it with Arc, and then you swap back to your main hand and use your Lightning Conduit from Spellslinger, boom, and it will die. Right? You can use Spellslinger even without shocking it with Arc, and I do that. If you have a rare that shows up in front of you, if it has Proximal Tangibility, it's not tanky, but it showed up in melee range, and it's about to hit you, well, then zap. Gone. Okay? That's the playstyle. Super comfy, super simple. Now, what about the defenses? What about, like I talked all about the offenses and what you're supposed to do. What about the defenses very quick? Well, we have a 33% chance to evade. Now, you might think that's very low, but in reality, it is quite a lot. This will make you feel way tankier as compared to if you only went Energy Shield. Okay? And I tried both setups, so I know this. Trust me. The reason for this is, if you go pure ES and something hits you, like some random ignites or some random ground degen or some random off-screen projectile comes and hits you, your ES goes down, and now you have to wait a year for that ES to start recharging. It's 3 seconds right now on my build, and I even have 40% faster start of ES recharge and some more ES recharge on the tree. It's still 3 seconds. And it recharges 500 ES per second. At 3000 ES, that is 5 seconds. You don't want to spend 5 seconds in between getting hit. Okay? That is just very unfun. It's not smooth, and it feels like absolute crap. That is why evasion actually helps you sometimes dodge certain hits that are going to hit you, and then you don't have to lose ES. You stay on your maximum ES more often. It feels way smoother, trust me, and that is why I chose to go evasion in ES. So that's the primary defense. The actual real defense, as I mentioned, is just killing everything off screen before it hits you. That's basically it. If it's something is hitting you way too much, you will die. This build is not super tanky. Again, this is supposed to be a magic find character with 174 rarity on kill, which is super potent, and with a rarity charm, this goes up to almost 200. So it's not supposed to be a face tank build. It's supposed to be a build that farms you a ton of currency, so keep that in mind, please. So that's it for the mechanics, the playstyle, the skill gems, all that stuff. Now we're going to talk about the gear, and then the passive tree, and then the gear swap. So the gear, the wand is very simple, +4 lightning spells, cast speed, mana, and then some lightning damage, reveal, and gain is extra. Very simple damage stats, nothing to see here. Ideally, you would want that intelligence to be crit chance, but it's okay. This is very cheap to craft, and if you want to know how to craft these, I went over that in my first Abyss crafting video. I crafted the wand and the focus over there, so I will have that linked in the description. Go over there, check that out, and that'll be pretty simple. The focus, again, also same thing, spell levels, cast speed, mana, damage, all that stuff. If you want to know how to craft this, same thing, same video, super simple. Nice. Amulet, I will go over how to craft this amulet in the end. It is pretty simple, very deterministic to get the spell skills, the cast speed, and the spell damage. The rarity prefix and the mana prefix are where the RNG comes from. Those are not guaranteed, but even without mana on the prefix, even without the extra rarity on the prefix, you are still completely fine. Don't worry about it. This was the old amulet I was using with global defense, mana, no rarity on it at all. This was my old crappy one. So that is what I was using for majority of the game. So don't worry, this versus that, you won't lose much. As long as you have cast speed and spell skills, you're fine. And then we have our 2 rings. These are super insane, super badass rings with mana, percent mana, cast speed, and mana regen, as well as rarity. And it is fully deterministic to craft these. There's a little bit of RNG when you slam the perfect mana essence, but besides that, everything else is super deterministic. As long as you don't get unlucky on the unveil. I will go over how to craft this as well, along with the amulet, so don't worry. And then body armor, helmet, gloves, and boost are all just the same. It is high defense stats on the prefix, and rarity and res on the suffixes. Same thing here, high defense stats on the prefix, rarity and res suffix, defense, res, rarity, belt. I will also go over how to craft. Super simple. You just start with mana, get res, reveal life. Easy. Okay, so I did go over the gear pretty quick there, but that is because there's nothing special to really talk about on the gear. It is just defenses. Use the runes to give yourself more defenses, because I am not res capped, because I believe being res capped is a meme. It is a myth. You ideally just want more evasion and more ES to be able to take the hit and go next, or just dodge the hit instead of just trying to mitigate the hit for this build specifically. Okay, so that's that. The glove rune, though, this will be magnitude of non-damaging ailments, because that will then raise up the magnitude of our shock. So that's going to be very important. The life on kill, just want to mention, that is a dead stat that does nothing. It does something, sure, but ideally you would want that to be another res, or you want that to be crit damage or something. And we also have the offhand staff here. So this is pretty simple. You just want chance to shock and cast speed. Those are your 2 main things. Having +5 to level is also going to be super nice, because it does scale the level of Sigil of Power. It scales the level of Arc, scales the level of everything that you have in your offhand. So the more damage Arc does and the more chance to shock it has, the more chance it actually has to shock something on the first attempt, because you really don't want your Arc to like hit something and not shock it. That's kind of awkward. So that's why the staff is there, and I do go over how to craft this yourself too, just in case you can't find this for super cheap on trade. So that's it. Okay, so that's the gear. Again, I skimmed over that pretty quick, so if you have any questions about that, just ask me. I just didn't want to spend extra time talking about very basic, simple stuff. Now we have our passive tree. So the tree is very simple and straightforward. It's just pathing over, getting some mana cost efficiency, and the rest is just lightning damage and crit. So crit over here, lightning damage over here, lightning damage up here, a little bit of int over here, some mana regen stuff over here, some skill effect duration over here. That is the only skill effect duration we take to scale the spark's duration. That's it. More crit, and then more crit, and then some defense stats over here. So this mod right here, very important for defense. This is what gives us a bunch of extra ES from our body armor. So very, very important to take this. And then this over here gives us a bunch of ES, gives us some ES recharge stuff, more evasion, and movement speed while we have ES. Very, very nice to have that. That's why that's there. And then some more crit chance against blinded enemies. As I said, we have a bunch of crit against blinded enemies. And some more prod speed and movement speed here because, well, I mean, why not, right? It's period 2. We want as much prod speed and movement speed as we can. And then this node over here, more maximum lightning damage. This is what gives you the extra damage on the right side here. So this number over here goes up super high, making the roll range even higher. But don't worry, we have ways to mitigate that. So the generic part of the skill tree is done. There's nothing to really explain there, but there is stuff to explain regarding the weapon sets. So let's talk about that now. So weapon set 1, which is your main hand, will have stuff like this. Lightning skills have a chance to chain. So all these 3 nodes combined give our spark 100% chance to chain 1 additional time. Very nice to have. And then this up here, increased lightning damage per 10 intelligence, also very good to have. And then all of these crit nodes, all of this stuff over here, as well as this stuff over here, and this one node over here for maximum lightning damage because I had an extra weapon set point. All of that, and these nodes up here too, all of that is going to be for your weapon set 1. Now, weapon set 2 is a little bit more interesting because, if I was to just swap over to that weapon set, so this is where we get a bunch of magnitude of shock for our arc. Because we don't really want our spark to be shocking that much, because we don't really need it to shock. We are doing all the damage with crits anyway. But with arc, we want it to have a big shock for that super, super juicy single target shocks. Okay, so we are using some travel nodes here to save us some points. And then here, shock, 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 and big shock. Same thing over here. Shock chance, and big shock. And then we are using a few points over here for curse magnitude and a few more points over here for curse magnitude. So that's that for the weapon swap. Pretty simple here. I know most people just use their weapon swaps for curses, but I got an idea from someone in my Discord who was talking about how instead of using it just for the cookie cutter curse magnitude, so why not I use it for something extra? So we're using the weapon swap to gain a lightning Archon. So this is a big tech here. Lightning Archon actually does not turn off if you swap off of the weapon swap. So here you can see if I cast my weapon swap here, I am now a Lightning Archon. If I swap back to my main hand, I am still a Lightning Archon. I still have all the damage that I'm getting from Lightning Archon. So that is super, super potent for your single target, for your mapping, for any sort of extra tanky mapping. You can very easily, very quickly proc Lightning Archon by using Elemental Weakness. This has a massive mana cost. So if I just wait for this to end here, look at this. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. I'm now Lightning Archon. Super, super simple to activate that. Super, super simple. And now you just have all this extra damage for whatever you want it to be. It could be super tanky Abyss, super tanky single target, super tanky whatever. So that's a very, very nice use of the offhand because all of these points generally are very bad. Having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on your main hand for a skill that turns off for like almost 20, 30 seconds is just bad, right? But the actual skill itself, 25% more lightning damage, convert all of your elemental damage to lightning damage, and have more chance to shock. So that means our flame ball, all the damage from the fire portion turns into lightning. So it's just super nice. And if you have any sort of other forms of damage anywhere on your tree or any on your jewels, all of that will just convert to lightning damage when you have Archon up. But just to know, you don't have to use it. You don't have to use this at all. You can mostly just keep on being your regular old Spark spamming in maps. This is just for if you need it for anything. Same thing, Arc, same thing about Lightning Conduit, is just extra damage if you need it for something. Otherwise, you never have to press those buttons or think about it at all. Okay? So, I've talked about the weapon swap, the main tree. Now to quickly go over the jewels. So the jewels for this build are pretty potent. We have prod speed, pierce, prod damage as the jewel over here. The final suffix is very hard to hit, so just ignore that. Just try to get a 3 module at best. And I will show how to craft these in the end as well. You can self-craft jewels, so that is something new. And the other jewels are just going to be as much crit and shock magnitude and ailment magnitude that you can squeeze onto one jewel. Just do it. So that's what this jewel is. That is what this jewel is. Crit chance, crit damage, ailments, and then an unveil for elemental damage and more ailments. So the ailment scales our shock, the crit scales everything. And then we have the last jewel here, which is the Heart of the Well. Now, I went over this in my previous, early rendition of Spark, and this is probably the most powerful jewel that this entire build will use, and is the only unique that we are using. And the only two mods that you mostly care about are going to be a high roll of the chance for lightning damage with hits to be lucky, and the chance to pierce to be as high as possible. But this is a lowest of low roll, and it's still okay, because the lightning damage with hits to be lucky is the main thing. Because since our lightning damage has such a massive roll range, we really want it to be lucky, because lucky basically makes it roll that roll range twice before it hits something, and it uses the better results of the two. So the first hit rolls 450, and the second hit rolls 9,000, it's going to pick 9,000. Or if the first hit rolls 9,000 and the second hit rolls 450, it will still roll the 9,000 because that is still the better result of the two. On that note, that is also why we have Lightning Rod anointed on the amulet, because for an additional 30% chance for lightning hits to be lucky, for a total of almost 54%, which is a huge damage boost. It'll make your sparks do way more consistent high damage. So nothing beats that. This jewel plus this anoint is super strong. This anoint is a little bit expensive. It's, I think, around 350 exalts total price for all the delirium emotions that you will need to anoint this. If that is out of budget for you at the moment, then you can anoint Storm Charged instead, which is a Fear, Envy. These three combined are 100 eggs. But if you're going to be spending on an anoint anyway, might as well spend the extra amount on Lightning Rod. So pretty simple. That's it for the jewels. And now the Ascendancy. Ascendancy is going to be also pretty simple. We have Arcane Surge guaranteed from our Ascendancy. We don't have to take any extra points for it. We just have it. Arcane Surge gives us some extra cast speed and more mana regen. Very nice. And then we have Force of Will. This gives us 20% increased effect of Arcane Surge per 10% missing mana. So what this means is that as we spend our mana and we go lower on the mana, our Arcane Surge effect goes up. So the 20% more mana regen goes up to 100% more mana regen if we are missing 50% of our maximum mana. That is why, if you see here, I start going down on mana as I'm casting, but I actually stop and I don't go further, and I don't actually fully run out of mana until I go super low. Okay? So in maps, you actually want to be lower on mana because you actually get more cast speed. So if I see here, my Spark, you can see the cast speed numbers actually go up as I go lower and lower. They go up to 4 casts per second as I'm reaching lower and lower points of mana. That is why, with the total amount of mana regen that we have in this setup, we actually want to be on lower mana. So you will hear your character say, "Miss, I'm low on mana, I need mana," keep on yelling and crying about mana a lot, but don't worry about it. See, right there, you will hear her say that quite a bit, but that is intended. It's okay. We will keep on getting mana back with mana on kill. So don't worry about that. It's not costing you any DPS. It's giving you more DPS So have faith in the low mana playstyle and don't worry about it. Besides that, we have Strike Twice. This is what gives us those double shocks for Lightning Conduit, for regular mapping, for everything. And then we have our final point, Tempest Caller. This gives Elemental Storm, and it triggers on crit. We've already talked about that. So pretty simple there, pretty easy. That is it for the entire passive tree, the Ascendancy, all that good stuff. And quickly, because a lot of builds actually don't talk about this part, it is going to be what buffs should you take during the campaign if you are leveling this build up fresh. So those buffs are going to be increased charm effect duration in Act 2, Valley of the Titans, from those 2 islands you place in. Is going to be 25% increased mana regen from the Venom Crypts in Act 3. Is going to be 5% increased maximum mana from Navali's Rest in Eye of Inagora. Is going to be 30% increased mana recovery from Flask from the Goddess of Justice in the Abandoned Prison. And over here is supposed to be global defense. I have +5 all attributes here. I have to go ahead and change that, but it's supposed to be global defense. So that's all. So that's it for the build guide. Now I will be going over the crafting for the rings, the amulet, the belt, and the offhand staff, because that's the only thing that I haven't already covered in previous crafting guides. So I will see you there. Take care. I wanted to mention a quick thing about the POB link. So you can see here that these 3 points are not being shown as weapon set 1. I don't really understand why the POB bugs out and is not showing these as weapon set 1, because they are weapon set 1 here in game. So just remember that these 3 points, if you're confused where your last 3 points are supposed to go, they're supposed to go in here. Okay, please remember that. There is also a full leveling tree up until level 84 that you're supposed to be using if you are leveling with this. There is an entire note section that describes all the different skills, all the gear that you're supposed to get while you're leveling, how to get all of it, which gear to use, when to use it, when to swap things around, Act 1 gems, Act 2 gems, 3 gems, 4 gems, interlude gems, all the way up into early maps. How you're supposed to play all of that is all written down in the note section here. And then there's also a full video for this initial setup on my channel, so you can go check that out. I will leave that in the description as well. So make sure you follow all of that. And once you reach this point in the tree, level 84-ish, then you will swap over to the new tree, which is going to be this one over here. So this tree right now is supposed to be level 92. It says 95 here because of this weird bug with the weapon swap gems, weapon swap skills. But this is level 92. So before you hit the point of level 92, you will just not be taking this last jewel socket over here. You'll just put these points into some more crit or something else until you hit level 92. And then after level 92 is just whatever you want to put points in. You can get more crit. So do that. You can get more defense by going over here into this node, these nodes, more cast speed, more whatever. It's up to you. But I'm stopping this at level 92 because most people can't really go above level 92. It's a pretty decent breakpoint to stop at. So that's where I am stopping at. Okay, so to craft the ring, it's fairly straightforward. You have to get yourself a mana and cast speed base. Now, you don't have to get a breach ring base. These will be expensive with mana and cast speed already on them. I would rather you just go and get yourself any pearl ring or gold ring base with mana and cast speed. That is what I did for the mid-budget version. This is the ring that I'm going to be crafting for my end game version. So keep that in mind. This took me around 2 to 3 div, I think, of annuls and perfect augmentations to hit mana and cast speed tier 1. So keep that in mind. If you go for a breach ring, it can get a bit expensive, and there is still a chance that you can brick the base later on with one of the slams. So first you use a rarity essence. You can use a resistance essence if you want, but magic find, I want rarity. It's rarity essence. Perfect, max roll rarity, that's great. Then you use a suffix bone on the item. So suffix omen, bone, boom. We're at this step now. Now comes the fracturing orb. Now you really want to fracture the mana. That will make the essence slam step be completely risk-free. But if you do not fracture the mana, then you would have to go for a 60% chance to hit and a 33% chance to miss. And if you miss, then the base is essentially half bricked. It's not fully bricked, it's half bricked. And I'll talk about how you can still sort of try to save it. But if you fracture a suffix, then that's mostly just irrelevant. But here we go. Please hit mana. So I did not hit mana, but that's okay. It's fine. It's whatever. Then now you want to greater exalt your prefix once, boom. And then you want to greater exalt your prefix again, boom. Oh, wow. Wait a minute. Wait a damn minute. No. No, don't give me a 43% rarity ring. No, no, please. Not like this. Not like this. Oh no. Oh no. No. BRB, hang on, give me a sec. Okay, after doing some thinking, there is no way I can save the rarity here. It's just gonna be pure RNG. This essence now has a 33% chance to hit the cold damage. I really want it to hit the cold damage. That would make this an absolutely monstrous Giga 43% rarity ring with mana and percent mana. But I don't see that happening. But anyway, that being said, you probably are not going to hit rarity on your prefix slam. You're just going to hit 2 random modifiers, and then you're going to use this essence to try to just not hit mana, hit one of the other 2 mods, and get yourself percent mana. So here you go. Prage, don't hit rarity, don't hit mana, hit cold damage, boom. I'm lagging. Okay, there we go. It slammed something. It slammed something. I don't want to look. You know what? I'm gonna pick up the ring. Look here, okay? This is my rarity right now, 192%, and I have 2,439 mana. Okay? So when I put this ring on, my mana should go up and my rarity should go up if it removed the cold damage. Boom. My rarity went up. My rarity went up. I'm big. But now the question is, did my mana go up? Yes! Let's go! We hit it. We hit the nuts. We kept the rarity. Well, now this is an insane ring. Well, GG, I guess. Okay. But now, no! The next step is just pure BS RNG. You want to unveil mana regen on that final suffix. So hopefully you hit it on your first try. And again, if you do not hit it on your first try, you will either have to use an Omen of Light to remove it and go again, or if your base is cheap, then ditch the Omen of Light and then just redo all the steps that you've done so far, because an Omen of Light is almost a little over to div. So if your base is not a breach ring, and if you're using a pearl ring or a gold ring that was like 10-15x, then just do all those steps again, because all the pieces I used were super cheap. So yeah, hopefully this gives you mana regen on the first try. So boom. It's mana on kill, that's not mana regen, so I reroll. Please mana regen. No. Well, no mana regen. Got int though, which is okay-ish, but I need mana regen. For now, I'll keep the int. But now this is an absolutely giga ring. The only thing that I would change about this, I would divine the percent mana to be 6% mana, but I'm not going to do that right now. That's going to be something I do way in the future. But for the time being, this ring right now is so monstrous. Like, it gives me 220 rarity. That's so insane, and also gives me from 26,000 damage, I jump to 36,000 damage. So that is, compared to the other ring, it's not going to be as much, because this ring has percent lightning damage, but thanks to the breach ring, I will have more mana for the end game version, and that will give me even more. Trust me. So just wait for that when it comes out. But for now, I'll have to go into Omen of Light jail until I hit mana regen. So wish me luck on that, but on to the next few crafts. Okay, so crafting the amulet is going to be very, very easy. You just want to get yourself a magic base with spell skills and any prefix in the game. It does not matter at all because we're going to be removing that anyway. Now, I chose rarity of items found as my base, golden amulet, because, I'm trying to make this into a magic find build, but you can make this into whatever amulet you want for whatever build you want as long as you're using spell skills. That is how you're going to be doing it. So, first of all, you want to make it into a rare item with a essence. So I'm using a rarity essence again because more rarity, more yum. Boom. Now you have rarity. So now we have a 2 suffix, 1 prefix base. So here, this is where things get a bit interesting. So we're going to be using an Omen of Sinister Crystallization to guarantee that our next Perfect or Corrupt Essence will remove only prefix mods. So an Essence of the Abyss counts as a Perfect or Corrupted Essence. So we use that to remove that evasion rating prefix because it's bad. We don't want that. So we remove it. Boom. That's gone. And now we have bears the mark of the Abyssal Lord. That's not really relevant, but it might be later on. So now we have this base, right? So if we go over to POEDB, okay, so currently the mods on the item are level of all spell skills, rarity of items found, and the mark of the Abyss Lord on the prefix, which has no tag on it. So level of all spell skills is a caster gem tag, and rarity is a drop tag. Right, so now, as we do with all the crafts in the game currently, in the end game, we use a homogenizing exalt. What this does, again, is it adds a mod of the same type as an existing item. Now, usually, in my previous guides, you've seen me use this to slam 2 prefixes to get 2 tier 1 defenses or whatever, but this time I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently. Because there are 2 different caster tags on this item that I would want. Spell damage on the prefix and cast speed on the suffix. So if I use a homogenizing exalt with a greater exalt omen, which will make my exalt add 2 modifiers instead of 1, this will then add spell damage on the prefix and cast speed on the suffix, because that's the only 2 mods that have the same tags as the mods that are currently on the item. Now, some of you might ask, hey, rarity is a drop tag, and there's a drop tag rarity on the prefix, so isn't that going to collide with the item? Isn't that going to make it so it adds rarity on the prefix? No. Since we're adding 2 mods with the greater omen, it has to pick a certain tag that has 2 existing mods on the item that can still roll. So since rarity is already on the suffix, there's no other 2 rarity mods that exist on this item. So it can't roll rarity, it can only roll spell damage and cast speed. So do that, Home Exalt, Greater Exalt, and I'm going to be using Greater Exalt rolls because perfects are way too expensive and they're not worth it to use on a base like this. So if I do this, I should see spell damage and cast speed. There we go. So we got tier 1 spell damage and tier 2 cast speed. Now we're essentially just about almost done. Now, the next step is going to be pretty different for different builds. Now, if you are someone who doesn't want global defenses on their amulet, you can go for something else. You can go for just greater exalt slamming and ending it there, or you can do something else. But for me personally, I am an evasion ES base and I do want to have as much global defense as I can. This is my old amulet, for example. It has global defenses and ES and stuff. So that's what I'm sort of aiming for. So I'm going to greater exalt rob this. There's no other way to add a better prefix. This last one is just going to be a YOLO slam regardless of what build you are. So that's just hope that you hit something that is good for you. This is literally the best thing that could have hit for my build because I'm Archmage. So there's tier 1 mana, tier 2 mana. So now comes the hard parts. Now comes me perfect essencing the base because I still want my global defense. Okay, so since I hit tier 2 mana, I'm actually not going to perfect essence this because I'm actually going to keep this. This is way better for my build than any sort of global defense is going to be. So I'm going to keep it. Without that, I lose some stats, but I gain so much extra damage that I'm going to keep that. But there is still one final step to do, and that is going to be to bone this now. Now, since we added the Mark of the Abyssal Lord, that is going to guarantee that we get a high tier mod on this final unveil. So there we go. And I can still get global defense on that instead. So I don't need to use this essence. Be sure to right click the omen, reveal. All of these are bad. I'm going to reroll. There we go. I hit global defense and I also hit rarity. Now that is something to consider. Do I want rarity or do I want global defense? I don't know. I'll think about that. But basically that is how you will craft your amulet. So with the amulet done, now we can move on to the belts. This is going to be a very simple craft. The belt is not an important slot on the build at all. It is just a flex slot. This will be filled in with an ingenuity later on, the further endgame version. But for now, you just grab yourself a belt with mana and a high tier res, a magic base. There's many of these on trade for like literally almost no price because no one wants mana. So start with this base, get yourself any other res, whatever res you're struggling on the most. Ideally, probably you'll be struggling on every single res because your other gear doesn't really have that much res, except for your body armor. So put a res here. So I'm struggling on fire, so I'm going to put fire. So there's fire res. And then there's not much else to do, honestly. You just want to suffix bone the item because you ideally want to roll one more high tier res here. So suffix bone, boom. There it is. And your final two moss, you'll just get Exile Sam. Boom. Armor, ideally you want to hit like life or something. Or fizz thorns. Ugh, gross. But anyway, that's that. And then you go over to the unveil and hope that you unveil some kind of res. That is not some kind of res. Go again. And technically speaking, that is res. So I should have said high tier res. My bad, game. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But anyway, there's your item. You pick that and you be sad with it. Anyway, yeah, you don't have to be super sad though, because you will eventually very, very quickly be upgrading this belt anyway. And this belt was so cheap, you might as well not even have used a reroll omen. Just try to hit it. And if it wasn't what you wanted, just go again because the steps are super simple and extremely, extremely cheap. For the staff is also super simple. You just get yourself a magic base with any high tier spell damage or lightning damage, or that's basically it, spell damage or lightning damage, with a suffix for increased chance to shock. Because if you remember, the offhand is a shock staff for arc, so we just want as much increased chance to shock and damage as possible, so to have as much of a chance to shock the enemy on the first two casts of arc. So shock chance, you want to use a cast speed essence to make this have cast speed, and then you want to, here's the trick, you want to bone your suffix first. So boom. And the reason for that is the bone and the suffix omen are super cheap, and you want to hit your perfect essence of sorcery, ideally on that boned modifier. You don't really want to remove cast speed, you don't really want to remove chance to shock, but if you do remove one of those, you can still try to get it back with the desecration reveal. So here, so I removed cast speed. Unfortunate, that's okay, because just watch me, I'm going to get it back right here. See? Easy. If you do not get back the mod that you deleted with your Essence of Sorcery, just get a new base. These are like 1 to 5 eggs on trade, like no one cares about these random ass bases. There you go. And then for the final two prefixes, you just go boom and boom. And then you hit tier 1 mana, and what did I hit? Gains extra fire. Sure. Okay, I guess. But there you go, there's your offhand staff now. And then you want to socket this with some spell damage runes. Okay, so for the jewel craft, it's going to be a little bit awkward. So for the emerald jewel, you want to go ahead and you want to search up a chance to pierce an enemy, prod speed jewel, and you're going to see a few options. You want to sort by chance to pierce because that's going to be the more important stat. Prod speed is important, but just it's going to be hard to find one with high roll on pierce and prod speed both. So just scroll through here, and you want to look for jewels like these, ideally, because the emerald jewel that we have actually can only roll with 3 good modifiers that our build can use, which is Pierce, Prod Speed, and Prod Damage. Right, those are the only 3 mods that we can use from an Emerald Jewel that are actually useful to us in some way, shape, or form. So you can either try to find one with an open prefix like this one. This one is ideal, right? Because you can just directly use a cranium bone to add a desecrated prefix and try to unveil proj damage. Or you can search for jewels, not the 1-div ones. Don't break your bank. See here, 1x. You can buy these jewels and you can try to prefix bone off whatever 4th mod, the bad mod that's on the item. And then you can try to unveil that into what you want.
Sure
so
thing.
We're going to do that a few times here. I'm going to buy a few jewels that have these modifiers on them. Again, it doesn't matter what the other suffix is. Increased chance to shock is decent, sure, but don't try to go for any of those because you will break your bank trying to go for them. So don't do that. Prod speed, prod damage are the 2 best ones. There is also magnitude of ailments and shock, but again, just don't think about that too much. Just prod damage, prod speed, pierce. Those are the 3 mods you want. So let's pick up that one.
I guess it's worth that.
And then let's pick up another one like this one. Let's pick up both of these. All right, so here I have my 3 jewels here, and I have my craniums, and I have my prefix omens. So ideally, again, you want to remove the bad prefix and you want to unveil proj damage. So this, hope it doesn't hit prod speed. It hit prod speed, so that's a dead one. Try it again on here. Hope it doesn't hit prod speed. There we go, that's 1. And this one already has an open prefix, so we don't need to worry too much. There. So now you have 3 attempts. I don't recommend using reroll omens because they'll just add a lot of extra cost. And you already saw that these jewels are pretty cheap to get on trade because they're basically people's trash. So we unveil here. So here we actually hit magnitude of shock and lightning damage. So both of these are actually very good. Proj damage is just the most likely one to hit. But if it does not hit, you could take this, you could take this. I like magnitude of shock more, so I'm going to take that. I might even use that. So that's 1 jewel done. Let's still try on the other ones too. Let's make some ones. So here we didn't hit anything that we wanted to hit. Increased damage while you have an active charm. I guess that it sort of works. So sure. And then the last one, this is the possibly the best one if this can hit. So this hits 4% spell damage and 10% armor. Don't need that. Melee damage, no. And magnitude of ailments also works because shock is an ailment. So this technically does still work. So there we go. Now we have 2 jewels that work and 1 that is just kind of trash. So there you go. That's how you make your jewels. You will be doing the exact same thing for the other jewel. So now officially that is it and that is all. That is the build guide, that is the crafting, that is the POB, that is the skill gems, the mechanics, the playstyle. Every single thing has been covered in this video for you to have as much fun as possible as you're playing this. So that's it for me. If you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. But that's all. Thank you and bye-bye.